Hey everyone, welcome to Season 3, Episode 16 of the Senstennial podcast. Today we're going to be talking about how the Sens fared in their 5 matchups following the All-Star break. We're going to talk about Formenton's solid season, how he's doing so far, what future Gadette has with the club past this season, and then we'll talk about the Blues, the Sens, reflecting on the trade that was prior to the preseason with Sanford and Logan Brown swapping spots on the Blues and Sens. So we'll kick it off with the Sens. Over their last 5 games, they were 3-2 after the All-Star break. And it was a lot of games and a lot of nights. Pretty sure they played like 5 games in 7 nights or something ridiculous like that. So we'll kick it off there. And Bennett, takeaways from the 5 games that the Sens played recently.
Yeah, it was a little bit of a mixed bag, I think, because we had a few impressive and less impressive wins sprinkled in there. You know, we had really impressive wins against New Jersey 4-1 and Washington just on Sunday 4-1 as well. We had a slightly less impressive win against Carolina 4-3 on midweek last week. And, you know, that was a game where we played really well from the start, but then slowly let them back into the game, and it ended up being a little bit of a nail biter that it probably shouldn't have been. And then kind of like sandwiched between those 2 wins and then that win against Washington was a rough 2 games against Pittsburgh and Boston, where we got blanked twice in a row, 0-2 by both of those teams. So that was kind of rough. So it was an interesting stretch because, you know, we saw, you know, kind of like the team that we have looked like we can be at times, and we've seen the other team we can look like we can be at times, which is like we're either like competitive and with it and able to beat just about any team in the league, or we're just like complete nothing, crumble into dust, like get, you know, shut out by teams even if they're playing at like half speed. And that's kind of been the way this season has gone, depending on the week or the month. So it's kind of interesting. And I have a little bit more to say here about, you know, injuries and the impact that's having on our season. But I'll let other Matt jump in here first.
I mean, I think you hit it out of the park there, Bennett. I think the last how many games we played, we had a 3-game win streak for a little bit, then get shut out by Pittsburgh and Boston, and then followed up with a good win over Washington. I think one of the key things from all of those games was good goaltending. Like it was the thing that won the game, frankly. And even
we never conceded more than 2 goals in any of those games.
Other than the Carolina game, you're right.
Carolina, you're right.
But still pretty good.
Yeah, Carolina is a hell of a team. So it's crazy. You know, we haven't had really good goaltending since Craig Anderson was in his prime. And now we are, which is kind of weird. I'm not used to it. And so it's been amazing seeing Murray bounce back. Forsberg still playing pretty well. He lets in the odd crap goal from time to time, but it is what it is. I think Murray's now sitting at a .922 save percentage league wide, which has got him in with some pretty awesome company in the NHL standings. Having good goaltending wins you games. Having good goaltending keeps you in games when you have crappy offense. It's been terrible losing guys to the injuries that they have been, but Murray has really righted the ship for himself, but the team as well. We're still going to be a bottom 10 team, and there's no doubt about that. But just knowing that Murray has been able to sort of find his game again and become the goalie that we've seen him do in Pittsburgh, it's been great to see, and I'm really, really happy for him.
And I think goaltending has had a lot to do with how the penalty kills improved too. Because prior to December, I think, I can't remember what the stat was, but the Sens were like 28th in the league in the penalty kill. And then since December 2nd, the Sens are 2nd in the league in penalty kill. So that's huge. Like that's just a massive improvement.
Yeah.
And I think you have to credit goaltending with some of that because, we like to talk about some of the weak goals that Forsberg has let in over the last month or two. But for the most part, he's been consistent. Like he's put up a good effort almost every game. The game against Washington, he played fantastic. You really can't complain about a game like that. So I think there's something to be said for, definitely the goaltending. And it's nice to see special teams come around too. Power play, I think, has only been weaker because when you don't have Batherson or Norris in your lineup, those are two huge guys on the power play. So you're gonna sink somewhere when you lose a couple of big players like that. So I think the thing that was quite noticeable was the Sens were like, okay, 4 goals, 0 goals, 0 goals, 4 goals. And so it goes back to, yes, they have injuries that'll play a factor, but it would just be nice to kind of see some consistency. Like they were, I think, had the longest streak in the league over the last couple seasons of not being shut out. And then this season alone, I think they've been shut out 3 times. So, I mean, not saying that they're not going to have shutouts. It's going to happen, but it'd be nice to not have back-to-back shutouts. It'd be nice to see the guys really try to at least pot one, And I know it's easier said than done. I'm not a pro player, so I can just be like, go score a few. But it would just be nice that while the star players are out of the lineup, you see some of those more depth pieces step up. I think Connor Brown's done a good job. Nick Paul's done a good job. Formenton, they've all really stepped up and gotten some goals, gotten some offense going. Gadette is another one, and we'll talk about him in a little bit. But I think coming through scoring a little more often, especially when Murray gives you 2 excellent starts, you got to be there for him in front of him and really show some offense to help him out. But that's my biggest take, I guess, from this past week. And speaking about Formenton, or Bennett, did you want to chime in?
Yeah, sorry. I just want to circle back to injuries for a second. And this is a conversation that we had offline this week. But it's really frustrating, I think, as Sens fans, because we knew that we weren't going to be a great team this season. And, whether there's disagreement about whether it would be like closer to a playoff spot or further away, more of a lottery team, what have you, most fans understood like this was not really like a year where we were going to be pushing for it. But this was a year where we really needed to get some answers to some important questions about where this team is heading and what this team has and what it doesn't have. And what's frustrating for me is that because of the injuries and everything, we're not getting answers to those questions. We need to know, what is the ceiling for a guy like Batherson or Norris? Or, what does Stützle look like when he's surrounded by decent line mates? Or can Matt Murray, help put this team into a playoff position if he had a competent team around him? And it's really difficult for us now because we're going to be going into another offseason and another season coming up after this, after a number of disrupted seasons. And I feel like we still don't know a lot of really important things. And the fact that, Batherson is out for months now. Norris has been out for weeks and will continue to be out for weeks by the sounds of it. Shabbat is missing tonight. And this is all happening at a time where we're actually getting good goaltending from Matt Murray. What does this team look like when all of those guys are healthy? And not to mention, Pinto is playing and White is playing and stuff, and Murray is playing decently. The answer is we don't know. And that's not a good thing to not know, not just because we want to see the team play well and we want to see them be good, but it makes it really hard to plan for the future because we don't know what pieces we might still need or need to go out and acquire, or we don't know who we need to be drafting this summer necessarily, because we don't know. Like Batherson hasn't played a full season in the NHL. He's been great this season, but he was great for 35 games, and that does not that is not like a bona fide, you can take that to the bank. He's going to be a point per game player forever now. Guys can be brilliant for 30 games and then disappear for the rest of the season. It happens all the time.
Yep.
And now this season is just going to be another question mark for him because we're not going to know if he can hold that kind of production up across the season. We hope that he can, but we'll never know that now. We don't know if Norris has 40 goal potential because he was on that pace and now he won't be. And it's just there's not a lot to analyze here, but it's just frustrating because
you have a point. And I mean, it's like Colin White, this summer is the last summer where the Sens can buy him out for like a third of his contract money. And Colin White's been injured the entire season. The Sens don't know, okay, do we have a depth center? Do we have a depth winger? Like, what is Colin White?
He got hurt last year too.
Yeah. So it's like, what do you do with Colin White? And again, like Shane Pinto, he's played less than 20 games in the NHL. Everyone really likes what he can project out to be or what his ceiling potentially is, but we don't truly know because he's just been injured, and I'm not sure really when he's coming back. He might come back near the end of the season, but I don't think that's going to give them enough time to really evaluate how he fits into the lineup next season, right? They don't know if, okay, he's going to be our, I don't know, a top 6 winger, or is he going to play center and Stützle go back to the wing, So that's another question that's left unanswered, but I guess we'll find out in due time.
Yeah, I think Bennett, you brought up a really good point that none of us have the Palantir if we're going through Lord of the Rings terms of what's going to be coming. We can see that Brady Tkachuk is very much a top six winger in the NHL. He's going to be able to be good for putting up 60 points a season. That's awesome. Josh Norris leads the team in goals this year and did so last year, I believe, or was, just under Connor Brown. That's great. We can see that he's a top 6 center, but we're still waiting to see the rest of his potential. Is he going to be a bona fide goal scorer in the league, or is he just a trigger man on the power play? Drake Batherson, is he going to be a consistent point producer? That's another great question. But I would also say this defense, this revolving door of defensemen that come in and out of the lineup. Shabbat has been a mainstay all seasons, except for a couple games here and there. And tonight, I think DJ has Mete and Zaitsev as the first pairing. And those are 2 guys you would expect not to be on the team moving forward. And they're your first pairing. The question marks with the volatility of Brandstrom's stock in the Sens fan base is ridiculous. This guy makes one mistake and he's being has people jumping down his throat. If they did if they did the same thing with Stützle, it would be, nobody would have any confidence in him. These guys are going to make mistakes as young fellas. And we need to see what Brandstrom can do going forward with the defense here. We want to see what Jake Sanderson's going to be able to do once he gets here. Nick Holden and Artem Zub, that's a solid pairing that we haven't had in the Senators organization for a long time. They're just 2 really stable guys. Holden's gone after this season, and Zub.
After next season.
And then Zub has 1 more year or 2 more years. I think next year is so important to determine what we have in this team. But if we don't have a good idea of what next year's team and the future's team looks like by the end of this season, I just the faith in Pierre Dorion just keeps creeping out of the building. I expect, Zach Sanford's going to be gone. Dylan Gambrell is going to be gone. Austin Watson's going to be gone. All of those guys that are just sort of middling in our bottom 6. Because, a guy like Mark Kostelic is coming up and making himself a solid 4th line option. It's good to see that. But, what do we have? What are the Ottawa Senators? Can we all stay healthy? Can we all have good goaltending? Because frankly, if we don't have that and we don't have the consistency, we're just going to be doomed to go through it over and over.
Yeah, for sure. Well, we'll pivot from that and we'll look at some of the positives of the season. And one of the ones that is definitely a huge positive is Alex Formenton. I'm not sure what your guys' expectations were for him coming into the season. I thought he'd be a great third line depth option for the Sens before they ran into injury trouble. And then, man, injury after injury comes. Tim Stützle moves to center, and all of a sudden, Formenton finds himself in that second line left wing spot. And I think he's been making huge, positive use of his time there. He's got 11 goals, 11 assists on the season. So that's 22 points in 42 games. So very solid, honestly. And he's just looked so good beside Tim Stützle. And this is with him having minimal power play time. I looked it up. He's had 34 power play minutes the entire season. Just to put that in comparison, Brady Tkachuk, also playing left wing, has 131 minutes on the power play. So in almost a quarter of the time, and Formenton still has 22 points. So I think that's something to be really talked about. 3 shorthanded goals as well. And other Matt, what have you thought about Formenton's game so far this season?
Well, I mean, I can confidently say that one of my hot takes at the start of this season was that Formenton was going to be scoring 23 goals. And if he continues to do what he's doing, I think he's going to come in at 22. He is impressive. He has a lot of skill that I don't think a lot of people knew about. He has speed, which blows the doors off of, 95% of the league. And if he's able to finish those breakaways, he gets almost on a game by game basis, he's going to be able to score goals. So the fact that he has the skill to sort of couple into it, and he gets to play with, an electric player like Jimmy, it's awesome to see. Because they drafted Formenton relatively high. I believe he was a second rounder.
Yep.
So they saw something in him. And I mean, even if it was just speed, my God, he's fast.
Nothing wrong with drafting a Lightning McQueen,
Exactly. And I think it's been really nice to see his game really formulate this year. And he's a stud defensively as well. And I think that's what makes him such a valuable commodity to this team, and finding chemistry with Formenton. Now they just need a right winger and call it a day.
Yeah, absolutely. Formenton is having a really good season. He's a huge asset to this team. He kills penalties. He can actually play up and down the lineup. It's, as we discussed last week, it's something that gets thrown around a lot. But, in his case, it is true. He can play on the power play and not look out of place. He can play in the third line and provide some excellent speed and kind of dynamism lower down in your lineup, and he looks perfectly at home on the second line playing alongside Stützle. And his speed is a nice complement to Stützle's own speed and his skill set. It's been great. The point return has been pretty good. He had a slow start to the season, but recently he's been nearly a point per game player. And the one big question mark about his game is his finishing. I mean, he could have 20 goals already this season with all of the chances that he gets. I'd love to see him put away a few more of those breakaways, and then I think he can elevate himself from kind of a good middle six player who can hurt you, sometimes a 5-on-5, sometimes on the penalty kill, wherever, to a guy who can be consistently effective offensively, on the PK at 5-on-5, maybe get him some power play time. We want to see Formenton. I think he's capable of this. We want to see him moving from a guy who has an impact in parts of games to a guy that has an impact all throughout the game. Because I think his speed and his hands and his instincts are really strong, and I know that he's capable of it. We just want to see him take the next step. He's taken a step already this season, and I think he still has more room to grow. And I'd love to see that from him.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you there. And earlier I mentioned that Matt Murray and goaltending in general was a huge part of the penalty kill. You have to put Formenton up there too. Like the amount of breakaway chances he gets shorthanded. Like I said, 3 shorthanded goals this season. He's always a threat. And, like you said, if he can just finish on some of those chances, even like half of them,
Yeah,
I think
even
that
50%.
I think that he would have like at least 4 or 5 more goals this season. So definitely, I think he's been a bright spot for the team.
Absolutely.
So before we get to the next part of the episode, I just want to thank everybody who's watching or listening. We really appreciate you tuning in. And for those who are watching on YouTube, we want to thank you by doing a giveaway of a 2020-2021 Upper Deck Tim Stützle Green Dazzlers card, which Other Matt has so graciously offered to give away. So that's the beauty card right there.
Ooh, shiny.
Yeah, it's a
Dazzling
dazzler.
even.
Yeah. So all you have to do to get in on the giveaway is to subscribe to our YouTube channel and then just comment, either whichever topic you liked for this week's episode or a topic that you would like us to talk about on a future episode. So just do those 2 things and we'll do a giveaway probably at the end of the week, sometime during the Ottawa Senators Boston Bruins game on Saturday. So get in on the contest. We appreciate you watching and good luck. From there, we'll move on to another depth player who's looked pretty good for waiver pickup, and that would be Adam Gaudette. So far, in 17 games with the Sens, he has 4 goals, 5 assists for 9 points. He's 25 years old. And my question to you guys is, past this season, what is his future with Ottawa looking like? Do you think he's here for another year? What kind of, future does he have with the Sens or maybe in the league? And I'll kick it off with you, Bennett.
Yeah, I think he's brought something to this team. He has 9 points in 17 games played. Like, I'm not gonna say that he's like a superstar, but like he has brought some like flair and some offensive upside to our bottom 6, which is helpful. And he has put together some really nice plays throughout this season. We saw that beautiful setup that he had for, I think it was Tyler Ennis, to put that goal away a couple weeks ago, and it was kind of like a highlight reel play from Gaudette to set it up. He's had a couple of really nice goals himself. He's looked like an effective player. Obviously, like when you have a guy who you picked up on waivers and he plays in your bottom 6, have like slightly like more limited expectations for them. So I was just talking about Formenton now. I think he can be an effective player, every game in all periods on all parts of the ice. I don't have those same expectations for Gadette. We picked him up for nothing. Literally the 9 points he gave us are like 9 free points, basically. And I think that he can continue to provide some like occasional contributions offensively, and that's great. And he hasn't been, I don't think, a huge liability when he's been on the ice besides. So I would not hate to see him stick around for the short to medium term with the Sens, assuming that we can keep him around at like a deal that makes sense.
Yeah, and I think initially when the Sens picked him up on waivers, he didn't do too hot. Like he had a couple of bad defensive gaffes. I know in the first game he had that nice power play goal, but I believe he also had 2 really bad shifts. And then they moved him to wing, and I think since moving him to wing, he's been better suited for that position, and it's just kind of complemented him more to allow him to kind of do more on the offensive side and maybe not have to worry too much about the defensive side. And I know we talk about plus minus with a grain of salt here, but +2 in his 17 games in the Sens, that's honestly not bad for a depth guy. I'll take it. And that's really all I wanted to add. But Matt, what do you think?
I think you guys kind of hit it right on the head. He's one of the few depth guys that we have in our bottom 6 that I would want to keep around. However, I would and am looking forward to him playing with Formenton and Stützle this evening. And I know that they've had good chemistry in games previous. So it'd be really nice to see if there's a potential fit there going forward. Just because if you can find a fit internally for that right wing spot on the second line, like he produced at a good pace last year, and then just couldn't find a spot in Chicago. I mean, who would want to stay there anyways? So him coming here and then getting the opportunity to play on the second line with Stützle and Formenton could be excellent. And we can sort of see how it looks going into the end of the season. But, you know, if he's sitting just above a half point a game sort of clip, that's really good to me. And if you can keep him around, give him maybe some stability, like a short, like a smaller term deal that doesn't cost us a whole lot, like him, Ennis, Nick Paul, those are guys you want to keep around.
Yeah.
Whereas, you know, your Gimbrels, your Austin Watsons,
Sanford,
you know,
Tierney.
Sanford, Tierney, Clark Bishop, like all of these guys are expendable. And as it goes back to the point, like we want to start seeing the rest of the team formulated in the next little while here, and start trading people away, you know, that's get some assets. And I mean, I know Pierre Dorion didn't seem to acquiesce to that request, but do it.
We talked about it a little bit last week. It seemed like he started to come around to it because he did say like some guys they would bring in draft capital for. I think it was just more so like that's not the only thing they're looking for anymore. They want to make deals kind of like the Flames did, where they got to Foley. He's got 2 years remaining on his contract. The Sens, I think, want to do stuff like that where they can get a guy who's locked in. But I mean, I don't want to get away from taking away from Gadette's little segment here. So, I mean, if I was Dorion and I was re-signing him, I think giving him like a cheap, either like a 1 year deal at, you know, just over $1 million or around that mark, 1.1, 1.2, 1 or 2 years of that, I'd be totally fine. Because that way, even if he becomes a scratched forward due to internal growth or, you know, somebody else who comes onto the team via trade or free agency, that's still a cheap contract, easy to bury if need be. Or if you need a guy like that in the lineup, he really works wherever you slot him in, you know, as long as it's not in like a heavily defensive role. I think he's a fine player to just pop into the lineup. So
absolutely.
Yeah. So in honor of the Sens and Blues playing their first game of the season, we're going to take a little look-see back here and go to preseason when Ottawa traded Logan Brown and a conditional 4th-round pick to the St. Louis Blues for Zach Sanford. So far this season, Zach Sanford's played 45 games for the Sens and has 7 goals, 7 assists for 14 points. Not blowing you out of the water with those numbers, but that's what it is. And on the other side, Logan Brown has played 17 games, 3 goals, 3 assists, and he's being a healthy scratch tonight against the Sens, which is too bad because I think it kind of would have been nice for him to play against his former team, but it is what it is. So we're going to take a look back how it's worked out so far for both players. And also I'll let other Matt take the reins on this one, but Sanford had some comments in his presser today prior to the game, and we'll just touch on those as well. So first things first, like I'll let Bennett kick it off with looking back and what do you think about the trade after 45 games?
It's a trade. I mean, this is one that like there really isn't like a huge amount to say, really. We traded Brown for Sanford, and there's a conditional pick that we sent their way. Am I remembering that correctly? A 4th-round pick, and it's like if he plays over X number of games, then we get the pick, or they get the. I don't remember how that works.
So it's if Logan Brown plays 30 games this season, then Ottawa gets the pick back. So he needs to only play so he only needs to play 13 more games, and then Ottawa gets their 4th-round pick back.
Right. Yeah. Like you said, Logan Brown being a healthy scratch in tonight's game, he's got 6 points in 17 games. Neither of these guys are setting the world on fire. I remember around the time that we traded him and immediately before we traded him, I didn't really think there was like an NHL player there. I think that we're seeing that play out. Like, he's not setting the world on fire in St. Louis. He's out in and out of the lineup. I think like the writing was on the wall here that we didn't think he really had a future with this team, because for every flash of high-end skill offensively that he would show, he'd be invisible for like the next like 55 minutes. And I could actually say something similar of Zach Sanford in his time here in Ottawa. I mean, like he had that one hat trick earlier in the season, which was kind of like unexpectedly hilarious. But I mean, otherwise, like defensively, he's been not great. He's been one of the worst on the team for those metrics. And, you know, he's offensively very like streaky, inconsistent. Doesn't really do a lot. Every now and then he gets slotted in on the power play, and I just kind of like heave a sigh, because it's just like having just like a body on the power play. Anyway, so I mean, like I'm sounding like really harsh on this guy. Like he's not terrible, but it's just like his acquisition doesn't like matter to the Sens. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it doesn't
like,
move the
whether
needle
or not
whatsoever.
he plays for this team literally is like immaterial. Like there's a million Zach Sanfords in the league, and they all get bounced around, and they play 30 games here and 40 games there for whatever team. They have like, you know, like 12, 13 points, and they get moved on. It's just, he's one of those guys. He's just a guy that'll play for this team until he doesn't, and then we'll never think about it again.
I look at it. It's funny because, you know, all the time Zach Sanford has moved up and down the lineup for the Sens. I just kind of think back to the way that they probably could have just played Logan Brown there the whole time. Like, I understand he didn't want to play here anymore. And like, why would you, after the amount of times that you haven't been given an opportunity to succeed? And I mean, like, going into this season, the writing was on the wall for the guy because he just like mailed it in. Like, he didn't care about playing for the Ottawa Senators or at all in their organization. So it made sense. I think the most valuable asset in the whole trade is that fourth round pick right now.
Yeah.
Like that
Which is not something you can usually say.
Exactly. Like, I mean, Zach Sanford coming here was a marginal, like, bottom 12 forward. He would like have streaky games, and like, that's about it. He's not overly physical. He's not amazing defensively. Like, you could take one without the other. He's basically like a crappier version of Nick Paul, who doesn't do anything that Nick Paul does.
Yeah.
And then, you know, today he said, like, it's been hard for me finding a role here, moving up and down the lineup. And I think it's like, man, you got some big balls having to say that, considering like, what, you've never scored over 15 goals in your goddamn career? Like,
just think he has. I think
okay,
it was
if it's 16 goals, like, okay.
it was 16.
Like, he's not coming in here to be expected to be a top winger. And frankly, if he's expecting to do that, he needs to play better in all facets of his game.
Yeah.
He's not going to be here long term. And then he clearly he said, like, you know, I was born in the States. I've always lived there, and now living in Canada, it's an adjustment. And like, I understand you're living in Ottawa where sometimes it gets to be minus 40. And like, that does suck. But at the same time, it is what it is. I think with the COVID situation, it's made players less likely to be playing in Canada if they don't have to be. And I mean, if he's gone by, you know, 3 weeks from now, awesome. If we get an asset for him, great. I don't see it happening. Like, he's a marginal player at best. The fourth round pick is the most valuable part of that deal. And Logan Brown, like, everybody was like, oh my God, he has 5 points in 6 games, and he has 6 points in 13, like, or 17. Logan Brown's biggest detractor was himself. Yeah. Like, he didn't put enough effort into things and mailed it in some scenarios, and that's why he's where he's at.
Yeah, with Logan Brown, I know we've discussed this at length before, but I just want to reiterate the point that I know that things could have been handled better by the organization here and there, but you cannot look at a team that, gave Norris the 1C spot last season right out of training camp when he had 6 NHL games under his belt and say they don't give opportunities to young players. Josh Norris fucking took it. And Brown never did.
Pinto took
it. Yeah, these guys had single-digit NHL experience and started the season this past year, this season as the 1 and 2C on this team. You cannot sit here and tell me that Logan Brown was never given a shot.
Yeah, and even Alex Formenton and Drake Batherson. They probably they over-ripened in the AHL and then clawed their ways to being top 6 forwards.
Yeah.
Even Nick Paul had to really claw his way to get to the lineup. Yeah. But I mean, I want to, if I go back to refocusing on Logan Brown and Zach Sanford, I also think the parallels between the two players are really funny. They're both big players. Logan Brown's 6'6", Sanford's 6'5". They're both not physical really at all. Yeah, Sanford's a
Zach
big boy.
Sanford is 6'5".
And that's what I'm saying.
He plays like a 5'11", I don't know. Boy.
So anyway, Sanford and Logan Brown, almost the same size. Both don't use their bodies to their advantage. They're not physical players, perimeter guys. Logan Brown has a lot of skill that we did see flashes of in Ottawa, but I will give him credit. The Blues have a deep lineup, and it is going to be tough to really make yourself be a regular in that lineup. But let's not forget, he was put on waivers earlier this season, and nobody claimed him. And I think that really says something about the league's perspective on Logan Brown. So I think that has to be taken into consideration. I will say that the one difference that I do see between Sanford and Nick Paul, just because that was brought up, I do think that Sanford does have more flashes of offensive creativity than Nick Paul does. But I think because Nick Paul kind of can really do anything, you put him in whatever situation, that he's just the more useful player. And you'll see games where Sanford is does a couple nice little dangles and gets a sweet pass off or a scoring chance, and you're like, oh, damn, okay, where'd that come from? And then there's 5 games in a row where I can't name one notable thing he did on a shift or in a game.
If you gave Zach Sanford Nick Paul's effort level and attitude, he would probably be a top 6 winger.
Yeah. And I'm sure like other Matt said, he has reasons, I guess, bouncing up and down the lineup. Yeah, that sucks. You can't really build chemistry with people. Adjusting to a new country. Totally get that. That's not, it's tough. But I don't know. I think at the end of the day, if the Sens can trade him out, it's nice that he has a Stanley Cup under his belt, because I find a lot of the dinosaur GMs love that crap.
Gets you a long way.
So every time I hear people hockey analysts or whatever talking about it, they're the Sens could probably flip him for a 3rd round pick. I'm like, man, if the Sens flip him for a 3rd, that is solid. Remember when they flipped Nemesnikov for a 4th? They traded a 4th for him and then got a 4th back.
Yeah, that's miraculous.
Nemesnikov deserved, a higher pick than Sanford.
Yeah.
But I digress. I think that, I believe Bennett said, it's just kind of a bit of a wash of a trade. And if the Sens get that 4th rounder back, then beauty, they can use it and draft a guy who might end up being a depth player who fits the role that Sanford is. So, or maybe a Drake Batherson.
Oh,
but thanks everyone for listening or watching today's episode. You can find us at the Senstennial Podcast on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. I'm on Discord, as I always say. You can find me there, and on Reddit, where we post all our episodes, and we do summaries of some of the interviews on TSN 1200 of players and GMs and all that stuff. So follow us or find us on there. We appreciate it. Thanks so much for watching, and go Sens go, baby.